Welcome to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25 Media. We feature top founders, executives, and business leaders from all over the world.
Chad Franzen here, co-host for this show where we feature top restaurateurs, investors, and business leaders. This is part of our SpotOn Series. SpotOn has the best-in-class payment platform for retail, and they have a flagship solution called SpotOn Restaurant, where they combine marketing, software, and payments all in one. They've served everyone from larger chains like Dairy Queen and Subway to small mom-and-pop restaurants. To learn more, go to SpotOn.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. We help B2B businesses to get ROI, clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships through Done-For-You podcasts. If you have a B2B business and want to build a great relationship with clients, referral partners, and thought leaders in your space, there's no better way to do it than through podcasts and content marketing. To learn more, go to rise25media.com or email us at support@rise25media.com. Terces Engelhart and her husband are co-founders of Cafe Gratitude, which has 5 Southern California locations, and Gracias Madre, with locations in San Francisco, West Hollywood, and Newport Beach. They're also authors of Sacred Commerce, a book about their company culture. Terces, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Good. I'm great. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So the name of your hospitality company that runs Cafe Gratitude and Gracias Madre is Love, Serve, Remember. Can you tell me what brought that name about?
Well, okay. So first of all, our business model is a little bit different than the average restaurant. We would say people are our number one product. So it's about creating an environment for people to grow and change. And Love, Serve, Remember is a core motto of that, which is, love everyone, serve everyone, and remember who you are.
When you started your first restaurant, did you have that kind of business model, where, as a foundation for people to grow in mind, or did you start it as an idea because we wanted to have a restaurant?
Nope, we started it that way. So when my husband and I got together 20 years ago, we said we were just going to kind of trust what we call our intuition or internal guidance. And the first kind of guidance we got was invent a board game, which is a unique message or assignment. Neither of us even play that many board games. So we took about a year of our life and we invented a board game called The Abounding River, which is about keeping your attention on 5 qualities: creation, responsibility, self-worth, love, acceptance, gratitude, generosity, and abundance. And that grew out of both of us are committed to the transformation of people. Nothing excites us more than seeing people have a new freedom or a possibility in their life in an area where they didn't before. So, when we opened Cafe Gratitude, at the time we were vegetarians, and then I'd read about a raw food or living food diet. And I was like, hey, let's try this. Because I come from a background of actually food abuse, sexual abuse, eating disorders, and then recovery. And so we did. We tried it. We loved it. We liked how we felt. I was in my 50s. He was in his 40s. And so we actually started making raw food and sharing it with friends and asking people, hey, would you ever go out for this? Would you, tell other people about it? So when we opened the first cafe, the board game was on every table, and it was a raw food or a living foods, or now what we call plant-based, 20 years later, and it's popular. We're a plant-based restaurant. So it started that way originally. We used a funny little program before we created our own Sacred Commerce. We used a program called Fish out of Pike Street Fish Market. They had a kind of inspirational employee program. We used that initially, but it's always been for us about the people, changing lives, kind of one person at a time. And obviously for us, serving healthy food and creating healthy environment is paramount to accomplishing that.
Is the board game still there?
The board game's not as obvious. So we have pieces of it. We have question of the day, and we do the affirmations are still on the menu. The board game itself, I just bought one off eBay because I gave my last one away. So I bought one on eBay for more money than they ever were sold at. They're around, but we've talked about bringing back just the cards, but it's an amazing game. And like I said, you can find it through like third-party sellers now, but no, it's no longer on the tables.
So tell me a little bit more about Cafe Gratitude. What can a customer kind of expect when they go to one of your locations?
Well, hopefully what you expect is to be kind of surprised. You can, hopefully you feel welcome and like you belong and like it's something that you've been missing. They're going to ask you what you're grateful for or some version of that. So we do those questions for guests as a way of helping them be present, like actually right here, right now. And in this kind of busy, hectic world with a lot of technology, it's easy to be distracted. So it's a vehicle for us to be able to look you eye to eye and acknowledge you and appreciate you. What you can expect is, I think, some of the best plant-based food in the world, and hopefully customer service that has you feel seen and heard and acknowledged and appreciated.
You kind of alluded to this already, but what was the inspiration for specifically the Cafe Gratitude concept?
Well, gratitude is one of the qualities in the board game. It's also the quality that we say nows your mind, which is not actually proper English, but it brings your mind into the here and now, this present moment, which we believe is where all the goodies in life live, where love is, where appreciation is, where connection is. It's all right here now. And we know for ourselves and for most other people, we spend a lot of time in the future and the past and less time in the present moment. So it's a tool, it's a training tool for helping us be present. And gratitude is access to everything else. Nothing ever really changes if you're not grateful for the way it is. Otherwise, you're attempting to change something, but you're probably making what is wrong, and then you're carrying that forward. So it's just part of our whole training and cultural ethos, which is, it all starts with a grateful heart, a grateful mind. Gratitude is connected to grace, the same word, grace, gratitude, gratefulness, appreciation. They're all connected.
Yeah, on your website, you make no bones about the fact that you're guided by 7 core values: sacred commerce, gratitude, acceptance, abundance, freshness, regenerative choice, and love.
Yep.
Can you maybe expand on sacred commerce for me?
Well, Sacred Commerce is a book that we wrote because other businesses were asking us about our cultural model. Now, interestingly enough, I was talking to my son who works in the business. He still oversees the restaurants. And I said, it's so interesting. 20 years ago, this was so weird. And now it's not weird at all. Just like almond milk is a commercially made product, and cold processed coffee or nitro brew are everyday products for people, but they weren't back then. And neither was gratitude, neither was being grateful and focusing on who you're being versus all that you do in life. And so, we've just always, Sacred Commerce was the book that we wrote to share the business model with people. And we also use it as a textbook and a model for our training. So it goes through all of the tools that we use for healthy communication, for bringing out the best in other people, for listening and, sharing back with people what you've heard. So it's our training tools that supports the culture and the model that Cafe Gratitude is.
How does abundance play into your core values?
Well, okay. So abundance in our view is being grateful for what you already have. Like you can relate to this. I don't know if you have children or grandchildren, Chad, but when you have a child or a grandchild that's grateful for what they have, the experiences you want to give them more. Well, consider it's the same in the flow, in the unceasing flow of the unlimited resources that exist in life. Is the grateful person, more comes to them. And so gratitude is actually access to the flow of abundance. So they're very connected. And abundance is the ability to give and receive freely. So it's giving freely and receiving freely. And anytime you get caught in some version of a scarcity mindset, we say give, because giving is like anteing back in to that flow. And when you're out of the flow, you experience scarcity or not enoughness. But when you're in the flow, the allness of life is flowing through you. And, most of us have blocks to that flow, and they're necessary because very few of us, if any of us, could actually handle the unceasing flow of everything. It would be way too much. And so we have these blocks, and they come from, childhood lessons, what we were raised with, all of those things. And they're keeping that flow so that you can handle or manage it. The work that we do in Sacred Commerce is to help you identify those blocks so the unconscious ones can actually be removed or not. And if you remove them, what you do is you loosen that sieve and you allow more of the unceasing flow to flow into your life. And you've become a person who can take responsibility for that flow.
How does choice play into your core values?
Well, okay, so if you're not choosing, you're probably living as a victim. Like, I have to, or I should. You've probably got a lot of right and wrong, good and bad. Choice is the ability to freely choose this or that freely for no reason. So choice is huge, right? Most of us, when we teach people, whatever it is your experience, you're the one that's creating it. It's upsetting if you don't like what you've created. If you like what you've created, you're happy to say, oh, yeah, I created that. But if you're not, then you don't like that. But we're saying whatever it is that you're experiencing, you're the one that's creating it. And when you can get that, you get that you have choice to be able to continue to create that or not. So choice is freedom. Choice is absolutely the free to or free not to. And both are great.
You said that you guys opened Cafe Gratitude, not really, it was a restaurant, but it was a vehicle for other things. Did you have restaurant experience prior to Cafe Gratitude?
I did. I had opened a Mexican restaurant in the 70s in Pennsylvania. Nothing like what opening a restaurant is today. And I'd worked in and around restaurants most of my life, or in around hospitality to some degree. So, I had experience. And part of that is, as I shared with you, I had teenage sexual abuse. I was an athlete, and then I lived with an eating disorder. So restaurants are where you hang out. If you have an eating disorder, just like alcoholics hang out in bars, drug addicts hang out in alleys. You when you're living at a level of survival, you stay in the environment where you can get what you need. So a lot of my life, I'd been around food service, restaurants, hospital food service, didn't matter. So a lot of my life's been in hospitality. I now have 36 years of recovery. So Cafe Gratitude was really my give back. It was full circle. It was like, here's a way you can eat, and somebody can have a glass of wine and someone can have a green juice, and you can both celebrate life and love and accept one another. So it was really a part of my healing process 20 years ago, and also an offering to others, which is a part of the healing or recovery process as well.
Which one was the first location for Cafe Gratitude?
We opened in San Francisco. So Harrison, our first one was in the Mission District of San Francisco. Yeah.
Okay.
We were just laughing about those days. Like, it was such a quirky concept, and we were so out there on the edge doing strange things. And that core group is still quite close. So, you just go through something together. Yeah. So it was up here.
Can you tell me a little bit about some of those early days? I'm guessing it was a lot different than most other restaurants out there. There's board games on every table. What were the early days like, and how did people react?
Well, the early days, we'd ring a bell and we'd give something away, and people were playing the game, and there's a laughing square. And when somebody landed on the laughing square, everybody laughed, and you'd go up to a table and people would be crying because, motivated by the game, they'd be having a conversation that perhaps they'd never had with a mother or a father. I mean, I can still remember when I went up to a table and the conversation was between the surgeon who had saved the life of the patient, and they were there actually celebrating that person's life. And so you just never knew who was going to be at the table. And the board game inspired deeper conversations than most of us would think would happen in a public setting. And, we had people who did massages and foot reflexology. I mean, it was quirky. And, we had to explain to everyone, how do you get milk out of an almond? And you don't ever have to do that anymore. And the menu was then, as it is now, affirmations. And, people were uncomfortable and resisted. So it was a lot of teaching, it was a lot of holding space for people and supporting people and, helping people see themselves in a better light. But to do that in a restaurant, in a commercial setting, it was unique. It was different.
Were you driven at all to make money, or were you just confident that if you did things the way you believed in them, that would come?
Well, I think, for any business owner, you have to pay attention. If you don't take care of the entity can't take care of you. We were definitely less focused on it probably than you should be, or most people are, because I think my husband and I, in a sense, were idealistic about, you take care of people and you don't really have to worry about the rest. And then, like all businesses, I think you have to go through, or all growth processes, you have to go through some version of betrayal. And, we were one of the early restaurants that shared tips with the back of the house. And that's a gray area. It's still kind of a gray area. It's gone in and out of, it's okay to do it, it's not okay to do it. And so we ended up in a series of lawsuits where, a lawyer gets a hold of a couple of people and promises them significant amounts of money, and you know how that goes. So that's actually what inspired the Los Angeles growth. And it inspired my husband and I moving out to the farm here in Northern California. Is when that was happening, we hadn't been responsible enough to have a savings fund to be able to defend ourselves. And so we ended up closing several restaurants, laying off a lot of people, selling the building that we lived in, which was our centralized kitchen at the time, because we had 7 or 8 restaurants up here. And we had moved to a central kitchen model. So, you learn a lot of lessons in the process. And sometimes those hard lessons turn out to be, miraculous futures for us. New partners had shown up, and we ended up partnering with some people that had boots on the ground in LA, and the Bond Brights and us have been an extraordinary set of partners. And then as San Francisco was getting smaller and smaller, and we were getting out of the legal battles, LA was birthing. So, you just never know. And it was a great lesson. And now we're much more aware of our need. Well, we have a lawyer as part of one of our owners. So unfortunately, defending yourself is a line item for most businesses that have public interaction. And while I'd love to think it wasn't necessary and life wasn't like that, I'm also not as idealistic as I once was. And so defending ourselves is a necessary part of doing business.
Sure. So tell me about Gracias Madre. What can a customer expect when they go there?
Okay, great. So Gracias Madre was born out of Cafe Gratitude. We had a few restaurants up here, and we noticed that our employees, when they weren't eating our food, they were going to a local taqueria in the Mission, and there was no organic taqueria. I don't even know if there still is. Anyway, so my husband and I were always the interface between a lot of our employees and their families and communities in Mexico. So we were teaching sacred commerce in Mexico, and we were traveling back and forth and doing a lot of work in the communities of our families that were employees here. And I was moved by the hospitality of the mothers who live without husbands, uncles, brothers, sons who are working in the US, and how they were willing to do everything for us when we were there, even give up the family bed, let us sleep in it while they sleep on the floor. And so we talked about opening an organic taqueria. And I actually love tortillas, and I love tortillerias in Mexico. It's like my favorite thing. And I wanted to, be making tortillas and selling them and kind of really get some of that Latino culture into, the community. But what we ended up doing was Gracias Madre became a plant-based Mexican food restaurant. And we had a wall with the pictures of the mothers. We still do. And it's our way of acknowledging that unconditional maternal love that we see it in all cultures, but it's particularly prevalent. It was very prevalent for us in the Latino culture. And so it was our way of saying thank you. Thank you to the people who sacrifice so much that we here, particularly in California, but really in the United States, have people who pick our food and clean our rooms and care for our kids. I mean, there's a lot that you and I would have a difficult time living without due to the sacrifice that those women make. So what you can expect is really delicious plant-based food that you suspect isn't plant-based. It tastes and is so delicious and fulfilling. And actually, Mexican food, a lot of it is plant-based. Meat is expensive. And in the early days, the Mexican diet was a lot of vegetables and corn and beans and squash. And so it's very authentic. And we use recipes from some of the mothers still. And we also have an executive chef who helps a lot with recipes now. We have a cookbook coming out this year. So hopefully what you experience is, again, feeling seen and heard and accepted and that you belong. And all of these things are much more difficult to accomplish in this COVID environment that we're all living in right now. And have a delicious meal but you don't feel overfull. You know how you eat food sometimes and you're like, I shouldn't have taken that last bite. You won't have that experience because it's all organic, it's all farm fresh, and it's really delicious.
You also serve diffuser-free agave spirits. Can you kind of explain those to me and what sets those apart from maybe other ones?
Well, I'm not a specialist in the beverage thing, but we do tequila and mezcal, and we don't serve a full hard liquor bar, but we do serve tequila and mezcal because they're such a vital part of kind of the whole Latino food beverage experience. And we use agave as our sweetener. And also the agave plant is infused in a lot of those cocktails. So I'm not the person to ask about the specifics of the bar, but we have some amazing mixologists who create some phenomenal drinks. And again, they're actually good for you. Now, okay, great. So people argue, but they're actually in the realm of having a cocktail. They're some of the best cocktails you could have because they're all fresh juices, non-processed sweeteners, no artificial colors. They're all really beautiful, natural, plant-based beverages.
How has COVID impacted or changed maybe the operations of Cafe Gratitude and Gracias Madre?
Well, it's changed it a lot. And I think I have a good friend who's the CEO of Let Us Entertain You, which is a large restaurant company out of Chicago. And he says hospitality was ground zero for COVID because the whole notion of people gathering close together, celebrating life, having fun, that whole notion got kind of blown up with the fear of you have to wear masks and social distance and only do takeout and only do pickup. And so it's massive. It's impacted us. We've laid off 700 people, hired back what we could, laid off again, hired back what we could. We went to mostly terminal ordering. So we decreased a lot of our face-to-face interactions because people were afraid, didn't want that. And now we're in the process of actually bringing that back because people are kind of over that and ready to have more human contact. And I think, so we're in the process of that. But I'd say for me personally, it took a lot of fun out of it for a long time because the part of it that we love the most is the people business. And that was tough because our people suffered a lot. The people we serve suffered a lot. And I'd say it's just beginning now to kind of rebuild itself. And we're hopeful and optimistic that the human spirit will always move towards gathering and celebrating and embracing one another, and that will come back. So yeah, it's been a tough couple of years.
We talked a little bit about your book, Sacred Commerce, and you said you were down in Mexico teaching sacred commerce. What are some concepts maybe that we haven't discussed that people might learn from that book if they were to read it?
Okay, so I would say I'll just share with you some of the top 3.
Okay.
So apology is a great tool, and that's recognizing that mostly in our culture we think of apology as an assignment of blame. Okay, you're right. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. But apology for us is actually taking responsibility for my impact. So recognizing that in all relationships, I have an impact. And whatever I did or said or didn't do or didn't say impacted someone. And if it impacted somebody in a harmful or hurtful way, I can apologize. I can say, well, Chad, I apologize. That wasn't my intention. And I apologize that I impacted you in that way. So apology is powerful. These are the tools that we teach people to utilize to resolve any kind of conflict. So you know what it feels like when there's some distance between you and someone you care for. So it's a great set of tools. So apology, and that's a version of taking responsibility, and then making requests. And the way that we teach making requests is let the person know you're going to make a request. Hey, Chad, I have a request of you. And even set them up by saying, listen, of course, I want you to say yes, but I'll be okay if you say no, or maybe you even have a better idea. And then I make the request of you. And that kind of frees you up to be able to say yes, no, or a counter offer. And the reason that's so important is that what we've discovered is most people don't make requests, and they live in some kind of subtle form of expectation, hoping something will happen, and then maybe pleased if it does, but disappointed if it doesn't. And it kind of takes the power out of a situation where we train people make requests all the time and be okay with whatever response you get, and stop trying to avoid getting no by not making the request at all. And we say the most powerful people in the world are the ones that aren't afraid to make requests because they're not afraid to hear no. They just use it as it's a guide to, okay, whatever's next, or come back later and make the request again. And we all know that sometimes timing's everything. So apology, making requests, and then acknowledgement. So this tool can be used independently of itself anytime, anywhere. And it's probably one of the most powerful, because what the tool of acknowledgement does is it brings out the best in the other person. So for example, Chad, I could acknowledge you for being kind. Now, the truth is, I only saw your face for the first time when we logged on. I've never met you, but I believe that these qualities, kindness, generosity, love, acceptance, are we all have them. And whether they're developed and expressed or not. And oftentimes what determines how developed and expressed they are is how often they've been acknowledged. Just like, when we went to grade school, when grade school used to be a thing, when we went to grade school and people took roll call and they called your name, you said, here. You raised your hand and said, here I am. Those qualities do exactly the same thing. When I say you're kind or you're thoughtful, those qualities in you perk up and they're like, yeah, I'm here. And it may not have ever been acknowledged or ever been expressed, but the more you acknowledge it, the more it expresses. So you can actually determine the people that you live, work around by how you acknowledge them and how you develop those qualities. And, fortunately or unfortunately, we live in a world where mostly what gets acknowledged is what we do rather than who we are. And we say it's who we are that actually accomplishes and determines what we do. So if we spent more time on developing the being, the doing will take care of itself. So we're big on acknowledgement. Acknowledge, acknowledge, acknowledge. Nobody ever died from too much acknowledgement, and plenty of people have suffered from too much criticism. So ramp up the acknowledgement. So those 3 tools, for example, if we have people that are in conflict, we say, sit down. If your mouth is moving, you're either apologizing, making a request, or acknowledging. And that's it. No story, no he said, she said, they did this. And in a very short period of time, people are usually restored to a workable, compassionate relationship.
Okay, those are great thoughts. Thank you so much for sharing those with me. I have one more question for you, but first, tell me how people can find more information about how to get your book and about Gracias Madre and Cafe Gratitude.
Well, cafegratitude.com is that website. Gracias Madre, there's one in San Francisco and there's one in Los Angeles. So they have different websites. San Francisco is the original one. Los Angeles is the more modern, bigger, beautified one. So Gracias Madre, Gracias-Madre is San Francisco up here. Gracias Madre WeHo is the West Hollywood version. And our book's available on Amazon. And we also live on Beulah Farm, and we host our workshops up here now. We used to do all of our corporate trainings here. So we live on Beulah Farm. So you can BeulahFarm.com. And we still do our workshops and our trainings and all here. And we have a hospitality center here as well. So yeah, those are the best ways to reach us. And yeah.
Great. My final question for you: your sound equipment and your recording equipment is a little bit more advanced than most of the people I have interviewed on this podcast. I know you have hosted, or you do host, the Unreasonably Grateful podcast. Can you tell me why you started that and a little bit about it and your goal for it?
Sure. Well, I started Unreasonably Grateful early COVID when there was just so much disconnection between people. It's when we opened up the farm and created a lot more hospitality here. And it's a short, 5, 7, 10-minute narrative sharing the tools of both how I recovered and also just life skills from Sacred Commerce and Kindred Spirit, the work that we do. And it's just something that I felt like I could kind of drop into the ethers and people would be able to grasp a hold of something that would inspire, encourage, motivate them, help them make a little more sense out of their day-to-day living. And I'm in my 70s now. So it's kind of, again, it's another version of my give back to, lessons from life and things that may be helpful for people.
Okay. Hey, Terces, it's been fantastic to be able to speak with you. I thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome, Chad. Thanks for the invitation.
So long, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25. Visit rise25.com to check out more episodes of the show and to learn more about how you can start your own podcast.